How's it going, everybody? This is Cameron White with White Light Astrology, giving you guys your April 2019 horoscope for Virgo, Sun, and Rising. Thank you guys so much for being here and liking and sharing and commenting and subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you guys. Let's go ahead and cut to the chase. I wasn't able to do my March 2019 horoscopes, so I didn't get a chance to talk about Venus going into Pisces and Mars also going into Gemini. So I want to hit on that before we really get into April. So Venus, as you guys know, is this planet of value and love, expression. She wants to connect things together. She wants to enhance things. Venus is going into, well, she is now going to be in one of her favorite signs, her exalted sign of Pisces. This is also going to be inside of your 7th house. So you have Venus, planet of love, value, relationships, expression. She's in the sign of Pisces, where Pisces is ruled by Jupiter and Neptune. It doesn't deal with boundaries like Capricorn and Aquarius have. It's really about freedom of expression and wanting to understand more of where it can express, how it can feel, and being more not specific. How a lot of Virgo sun, if you're a Virgo sun, you probably have, Mercury in Virgo, or if you're a Virgo rising, you understand when I say, seeing things in a cute, specific way. It's not about that with Venus. It's about enjoying the splendor of the moment. And Venus is going to be in your 7th house of relationships, of, other people, one-on-one relationships. And I think this is going to be a really good time, with whether you're single or in a relationship, to enjoy the people that are inside of your life and really go, how can I express better with these people, and how can I understand these emotions and feelings better? And the 7th house, all of your chart, it doesn't always represent you. The 7th house does represent your partner and other people. So at this time, the one-on-one relationships you have in your life, those people can be doing better, or your partner can just be feeling more expressive of themselves. Now, the other thing that's going on is on March 31st, we have Mars entering Gemini. So Mars is this planet of, action, drive, tenacity, wants to take things on head on. It's dry, it's hot, it inflammates, it causes frustration and problems. And Mars is going to be going into a mutable sign of Gemini, where it splits things into two. Mars in Gemini doesn't focus on one thing. It tries to multitask and to go into other avenues, to try to change things up a little bit. Mars is going to be entering your 10th house. The 10th house is all about your career, your public vocation, your public image. It's how the world kind of sees you. So with Mars going into your 10th house, I would expect maybe some irritations and some problems or frustrations with what you're kind of doing in your work or in your career field. Maybe this also represents your boss, so you could be, maybe your boss is just angry or something like that. But as Mars is in Gemini, you may be finding different avenues and different ways to really go about your work and to go about your career. Maybe there's different opportunities that you want to track down and look through, and it's just basically a time of expanding what exactly your energy is at in your career. Now, to actually get into April, because we'll talk more about Mars in Gemini and a little bit more about Venus and Pisces. However, the first thing that we've got going on in April is on April 5th, we have the new moon in Aries. This is happening in, what is this going on? In your 8th house, I think? Yeah, that sounds right. So you have a new moon in your 8th house. The sun's now in your 8th house. That's kind of a weird thing. The only reason I say that is because, so the sun is just a luminary. It's just bringing light to things. And the 8th house is it's an aversion to the ascendant, meaning it's hard to see, it's hard to understand what's going on there. It represents really obscure and taboo things like, death, taxes, inheritances, other people's money, things that you don't see or that you don't always know, stuff that people have. And a new moon is when you have both of the luminaries in one sign, basically focusing all the attention there. And this is Aries. This is about addressing things. This is about, this can deal with conflict. This can deal with, harsh, blunt stuff. And so this new moon in Aries in your 8th house is kind of like giving yourself a little bit of a pump up, a little bit more of like you can go through this and you can do this when it comes to dealing with things like change and transformation. Those are other 8th house things. New moon also, maybe your partner is, redoing their finances or their situation, or maybe you want to clean up and get direct and clear with where you're at with your taxes if you haven't done those yet, or where you're at with your debt, or where, maybe you have an inheritance, or whatever that situation looks like for you. We'll be talking a little bit more about that as we go on with the full moon. However, that's the first thing that happens once we jump into April. The next big thing that's going to be happening is on April 10th, we are going to be having Jupiter station retrograde. Now, Jupiter has been in your 4th house in Sagittarius for quite some time now, and Jupiter is this planet of expansion, belief, and philosophy. It's where we install our faith into and where we can have ideals, I should say. Now, Jupiter's in its home sign of Sagittarius, where it has a clear vision of what it believes, of what it's installing its faith into. And as Jupiter's been through Sagittarius, going through your 4th house of home, your private life, your family life, where you're living, your parents, your ancestry, where you've came from and stuff like that, Jupiter has been bringing, expansion here, maybe some more hope, maybe some more positivity, but it's really been showing you, what can come out of this with your vision. Now, as Jupiter stations retrograde and it starts moving backwards, it's going to be retrograde for the next couple of months. Jupiter will not station direct until August. Now, that's a long time for Jupiter to be retrograde. Now, Jupiter retrograde is all about going, what has Jupiter brought to you? What ideas, what philosophy, what beliefs has Jupiter presented to you? What expansion in some way? What vision has Jupiter brought to you? And what do you believe about that? Jupiter's in your 4th house, where you can make a positive situation right now with your living situation, but Jupiter stationing retrograde is, what do you believe about all this stuff? Is this in alignment with your ideals? Is this the vision that you're really seeking out? Or is it not the vision that you're really seeking out? Is this what you want? Is this what you have in your mind? Or do you need to raise your arrow a little bit higher above the target to hit it head on? So, like I said, this is going to be going on for a couple months, so it's just something to keep in the back of your mind of what's going on with your living situation. It's kind of like, well, how do I feel about all this stuff? But then as we move forward, the next big thing that we've got going on is on April 16th, we are going to have Mercury leaving shadow and entering Aries on the same day. So you guys just got done with Mercury retrograding in your 7th house. That was definitely a mess of miscommunication within the context of relationships. Mercury was in its sign of detriment, and it was just, probably a chaotic thing. And Venus is now going through there and kind of tidying that up a little bit more and making it look nice and presentable. But Mercury leaves shadow, we're all done with that stuff, and it then goes into Aries, into your 8th house, where, again, the 8th house is about other people's money, what other people own, taxes, inheritances, debt, death, as well as change, transformation, the taboo, the unseen, the weird. And as Mercury, this planet of messages, communication, writing, thinking, as it goes into the sign of Aries, the way that we'll be addressing this situation is going to be very much Arian, in the sense where it's very blunt, it's very confrontational, it's very clear on what it's communicating. You can't mistake what a Mercury in Aries is trying to say. And as Mercury goes into your 8th house, this is going to be the time where more of the mercurial things, more of your mindset and your attention is going to be focused on those 8th house area topics. Now, as we move forward, a couple days later, on April 19th, we're going to be having the 2nd full moon in Libra. So it's not too big of a deal that we have 2 full moons in the same sign, but what is important is that it is highlighting this axis in your chart one more time than usual. So like I said earlier, we have the new moon in Aries, where, it's kind of resetting your attention, resetting where you're kind of taking your direction with in those 8th house topics. Mercury's now in there, where this is a lot more on your mind. You're having to handle more mercurial things like day-to-day tasks in that area. But this full moon is happening in Libra in your 2nd house. And the 2nd house is all about money. It's all about what you own and what you possess, where your values are, or where your values are at, what you physically own. And this is a full moon in Libra, where this is about building bridges and building connections and delegating, working together, wanting to connect more. And so I think this full moon in Libra is also going to be kind of like what you've been dealing with your 8th house stuff, whether that's your partner's money, or you're dealing with taxes, or you're dealing with debt, whatever it is. I think a lot of that's going to be connected to what you own, what you possess. Maybe if you put for the new moon in Aries, you file your taxes, you get your return on the full moon in Libra. That would be kind of cool. But the idea of it is that this axis of other people's money and your money is going to be brought to light a little bit more than usual this month, so be prepared for that. And then The next thing that we've got going on the next day, on April 20th, we're going to have the sun go into Taurus, and we're also going to have Venus go into Aries. Now, as the sun goes into Taurus and it leaves your 8th house, the sun can now be in Taurus, where it's in a grounded, fixed sign. It's spring and it's growing, and it's going into your 9th house. The 9th house is all about your spirituality, your sense of beliefs, your far distance travel, foreign relations and languages, publishing and higher education. So as the sun goes into your 9th house, this is a good time to, you know, learn something new, go and travel and do something if you're going to feel grounded in that area. That's just more of the theme, and the light is going on learning, being a little bit more spiritual, being a little bit more philosophical, and being grounded in that sense, because you guys are Virgo risings. You're already pretty grounded in what you know already. Now, also on April 20th, we're going to have Venus enter Aries, where as Venus, this planet of love, value, connection, she's going from her exalted sign of Pisces to the sign of her detriment, which is Aries, which basically means Venus can't do Venus things all that well in that sign. Venus has to do Mars things. Venus, again, she wants to connect and she wants to make happiness, but Mars is like, you've got to confront, you've got to take it on, you've got to, you know, address it and attack it. And so as Venus is going into Aries, where things are going to be kind of counterintuitive, you kind of have to bring a little bit more love and value with how you address things, and you also need to be a little bit more stern with how you do address things, but also not going overboard and being antagonistic. This is going into your 8th house, so again, your partner's money, other people's money, debts, taxes. This is going to be shown a little bit more of a positive influence, but this is also going to be kind of a vulnerable time for you. Venus is in detriment here. She's in a very uncomfortable house. Don't expect, you know, you got to basically make good with what you got at this time. And with the 8th house also ruling change and transformation, I think Venus being in Aries is like, really address yourself in the most loving but serious way. It's kind of like, you can't just be like, oh, I love myself, I'm happy. Like, sometimes you got to really enforce it and be like, no, I've got to put myself first and I've got to do what's good for me. That's kind of the mindset that you want to take on with Venus and Aries going through the 8th house, is like, protect yourself. What's going on with you? How can you take care of yourself in the best way possible? And that is going to kind of show up when it comes to working with other people and what they have. Now, the next big thing that we've got going on is on April 22nd, we are going to have the sun conjoin Uranus. This is going to be kind of like the time where, if you haven't seen what Uranus is doing in your chart yet, you're definitely going to see that. Uranus just locked itself into Taurus, where it'll be for the next like 7 years. And it's also in your 9th house of spirituality, philosophy, belief. Again, far distance travel, foreign languages, things like that. And as the sun conjoins Uranus, if you haven't really seen what Uranus in your 9th house looks like, in case you haven't already had some type of spiritual breakthroughs or a belief breakthrough or something like that, expect a more of a clear picture of what that's going to look like on April 22nd. Now, the last couple things that we've got going on in April is on April 26th, we're going to have Mars square Neptune. And I brought this up because I think it's going to be really important, because as Mars is in your 10th house of your career and your public vocation and what you're doing, and like we said, it's going to be causing some irritations and some problems. You're going to be in a dynamic work zone. Neptune is in Pisces in your 7th house of relationships, where Neptune can be bringing duality, confusion, and mysticism, also the sense of spirituality. It can dilute the waters and make things unclear. Mars in your 10th house, where it's about the public eye. It's about how things are kind of viewed up in the sky. Mars is wanting to have, expectations on how it should be working with people. I should say that's Neptune. You can sometimes have a specific ideology of what relationships should look like in your life. You can have an ideology of what working on one-on-one with people should look like, and it can oftentimes get confusing. And so I think with Mars being in your 10th house right here, you might have some dilemmas and you may have some problems coming up with individuals in the work field, or individuals that you work with in your career or in that area, where they may see what you're doing and there may be a problem with that. There may be, I don't want to say a miscommunication, but Mars and Gemini, it's kind of like if there's going to be some problems, it's up in the sky, everyone can see it. And what you're doing, you may have some specific expectations on how other people should be involved in that situation. You may have some, an ideology that isn't as realistic as it should be. And so with Mars squaring Neptune right here, this is just a good time to remind yourself, hey, don't get caught up in expectations. Those are just premeditated judgments. And do what you know and make sure that you know it. That's Mars in Gemini. So that's kind of like my big advice for you with that. But then also on April 26th, we're going to have Pluto station retrograde. That's not the biggest deal in the world, but this whole month, we're going to be having the South Node basically go on top of Pluto, which is a big deal. Now, Pluto's been in your 5th house now for quite some time. Pluto, it's death, it's, you know, huge, scary things, anxieties and fears. And as the South Node is going over it, the South Node is this planet of, like, you know, not planet actually, it's just a archetype. The South Node is like, what do we need to let go of? What do we need to stray away from? And Pluto being in your 5th house of kind of like, you know, the way that you've constructed and the way that you've built up the framework with how love, romance, children, your hobbies, your creativity, what you literally create, you know, the things that you thought were holding you up aren't holding you anymore. And you've got to step away. I'm making this analogy of, it's like, if the house is crumbling, don't just stay in it trying to hold it up, run out of there. And I think that's going to be a big thing with the South Node over Pluto is, you know, just letting it fall, letting it change, and kind of releasing yourself from the anxiety and the fear or worry about that if it's going to happen already, if it's inevitable. Now, why I bring this up, though, is because on April 30th, on the last day of April, we're actually going to be having the South Node go over Saturn. And this is important because not only Saturn and Pluto are going to be really close to each other in April, they're not going to go on top of each other yet. That's January of next year, but they're going to get really close. And Saturn is this planet of walls, of limitations, of boundaries and barriers. And it's been in your 5th house of, again, love, romance, children, all of that kind of fun stuff. And a lot of the times it can feel like those aspects of your life are holding you back or limiting you in some way. But the South Node is there to be like, let's take that idea of these are holding us back and let's use this as a foundational support for moving forward. Saturn is trying to teach you a lesson. Saturn wants you to mature and be authentic and be disciplined with yourself. And the South Node going over Saturn is like, let's stray away from this idea that this is holding us back and let's actually let Saturn support us in reconstructing and realizing what needs to be built up and realizing what we need to put a framework on. And this is in the 5th house stuff of, again, love, romance, your hobbies, what you're passionate about, what excites you, and the fun things in life. You can feel like you don't even have any of those right now. It's not about going, oh, I can't have any fun or anything, but like, how can you use that constructively? I think that's the point I'm trying to make. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching and liking and sharing and commenting and subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you guys, and I'll be seeing you next month.